At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Greg,
Greg Higgins.
Nick,
Nick Pappas.
Judy,
Judy Zombrecker.
and Sarah.
Whoops.
Oh, she
Disappeared.
Don't see Sarah.
He
disappeared.
disappeared.
She was here.
All right, well,
Is that
why
her
don't
on
we
the
just give her a
phone
minute to
down
come
there?
back? 617-731 or 31. Oh,
Yeah, they should identify themselves anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever's on 617-314-0537, that phone number, if you could identify yourself by hitting the three dots in the upper right-hand corner and typing in your name. Thank you.
Well, they're on a phone. They should just at
Yeah.
least verbally
Oh, that's right.
give
Yeah.
Karen their name so she can put it in.
Thank
there.
you. Thank you, Greg.
Just need to hit *9. Either *9, *6 or *9. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
There are 6, isn't it?
Hmm.
Well, it's clear. It's
I think Sarah's,
blowing the coop.
yeah. Yeah.
The
but-
phone, the
Hi,
phone
Brian.
person's on,
Hey, Greg.
What's that, Judy?
the phone person's unmuted now, so I don't know if they were trying to introduce themselves.
Ah,
I don't know if that's my number, but it's Brian Davidson. I'm on the phone. Brian Davidson, 86 Peter Buckley Road.
thank you,
sweet.
Brian.
Sure.
Okay, well,
Well, we have a quorum. We can go.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. I think there's a change in the agenda tonight. I don't think we have the February 17th meeting minutes, so we'll hold those over until April 7th.
Correct.
And then we'll move to the director's update.
So the only thing that I wanted to let you guys know, and I reported at the last meeting, but Will Holden has started today, first day as land manager. We are very excited to have him on board. And I hope that with some of the volunteer projects that will be getting underway, that the commission will be interested in joining in some of those as well. He's terrific. He's a real gem.
Okay. That's it, Delia?
That's it.
Okay, and I just wanted to interject from the chair of breakfast this morning, just a couple of brief updates. I had heard that the planning board was making revisions to the tree bylaw. Delia, you might already know about that. No details on it, just a passing notation on that. And then hearing from the Agriculture Committee, I guess they came to a consensus that they were not going to support Article 49 going forward, the neo-nix. Again, no real detail on that, but that's just an update from the chair breakfast. And then lastly, I just wanted to again thank Delia for such a great effort, along with her co-authors on the
Right.
certainly on the beautiful book received in
Yes.
the mail.
Yeah.
Heck of
Yes,
an
thank
effort.
you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so really great effort, great product, a lot of labor and obviously a lot of passion to get that put together. So thank you, Delia.
You're all most welcome. It was, so I know I've mentioned it before, but just before COVID last year, I had reached out to Richard Foreman because we've had these terrific trail guides that are on our website still that highlight a lot of the history that the Trails Committee has put together with mostly Bob White from as the Trails Committee chair. But we have not had something that really highlights the ecology of our natural areas. And so I had reached out to Richard and said, would you be interested in helping me write something? And he just really took the bull by the horns and he took the lead on it and off he went. And I'm very pleased with how it turned out. So I'm glad you also like it as well. I hope it's something that provides some interest and education for anybody who picks it up.
Yeah,
Great gift too.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's great.
yeah, sure was.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I guess we're going to turn to the Blandings Turtle Report. If we could have I guess just a brief update on that. Obviously a great cause, and if we could get a brief overview, that would be great.
Great, thank you. My name is Brian Windmiller, 65 Arrowhead Road in Concord, and I'm Director of Field Conservation for Zoo New England. I've been running the Great Meadows Blandings Turtle Project since 2003, and we've been supported by the town in part for many years. And I think you all hopefully had a chance to take a look at a copy of the 2020 annual report that we sent. Overall, to date, since the inception, we have caught 71 non-head started individual Blandings turtles at Great Meadows. We've tracked, radio tracked something like 54 of those individuals. We've protected somewhere, I can't remember, somewhere around 140 Blandings turtle nests, and had many hatchlings that came out of those. Of the hatchlings that emerged, we have head started and released 523 of them back to Great Meadows over the years. And this past year, 2020, was quite a good one in many regards. We had the highest number of nests that we've ever found and protected in one year, which was 13 at Great Meadows. So that was super successful. COVID put a little bit of a damper on our field work because U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was forced by their own protocols to close the refuge to researchers for several months. So that didn't allow us to do a lot of the trapping that we had planned. Nonetheless, we were able to obviously do the nest protection and the head starting work. And the report also goes over a lot of the relationships that we've looked at. We've been able to analyze a lot of the data that we've gathered over the years and continue to show very high rates of survival for the head started turtles. We estimate that of those 523 head started turtles that we've released back into the wild, somewhere well over 200 of them will likely live to adulthood, which in Blandings turtles for females is usually at least 17 or 18 years of age. And that will represent a tremendous increase in the population size, which has been hovering around 50 for total number of adults in that population prior to our head starting and remaining. The first of the real head started turtle cohorts that we released were hatched in 2007. So they will be about 14 years of age this year. And they should be on a cusp of sexual maturity. Unfortunately, the first 2 years were both cool springs. And as you probably know, Blandings turtles have temperature dependent sex determination. So all of the turtles that hatched, in every single one that we looked at that hatched in 2007 and 2008 were boys, but that was different in subsequent years. And so it'll be another couple of years before the first girls get to that age. We've also been looking at, we have a lot of data on the growth rates of the Blandings turtles that we've head started after we released them. And we have a neat kind of tricky way to, based on measuring the turtles' growth rings. They have growth rings that are somewhat similar to tree growth rings. And we can therefore retrospectively estimate how big non-head started turtles were at various ages in their lives. And thus we're able to show that our head started turtles grow at least as well as non-head started turtles of similar age, which suggests that it's possible that our head started turtles, which generally have a 2 or maybe 3 year size advantage over the non-head started guys, may mature a little bit earlier. So it's possible over the next maybe 3 or 4 years that we'll see a number of our head started females first start to reproduce themselves. We've also been continuing to grow and plant buttonbush in the impoundments. At this point, even though we're growing, we've planted about 150 buttonbush shrubs, which can get to about 10 feet in diameter at spread at full maturity, which takes a long time. We have another 660 that we're growing at the moment. Sounds like a lot, but the impoundments are really large. So even when we plant all of those, this is really a proof of concept. So far, it's been going quite well. We're showing that we are able to grow these plants and successfully transfer them into the wild to help increase the shrub habitat at Great Meadows, which is really critical for the young turtles. The young turtles are very dependent on having areas of thick woody vegetation in relatively sunny areas. And that's provided generally just by buttonbush and sweet gale, and to a lesser extent by swamp rose. So anyway, that effort is going well, but again, it's primarily a proof of concept. And we're hoping that we can encourage Fish and Wildlife Service to invest further efforts in the future so that they can actually enhance the habitat in the impoundments, not only for Blanding's turtles, but making the mid sections of those impoundments, which are currently kind of open water in the spring, and then late summer, they're covered by nothing but other than American lotus for the most part. With some work, it would be possible to really enhance the habitat there for turtles, as well as for some of the rare marsh birds that use Great Meadows. And I guess with that, let me pause and see if any of you have questions about the report.
Thanks, Brian. Any of the commissioners have any comments, observations?
Well, I think just for the record, I know the intent here is for us to donate some funds. It might be worthwhile just briefly putting in the record where those funds are going to be spent. So if anybody wanted to know why we did it, it would be in the record.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I was obviously going to get to that. I figured I'd do the report presentation first.
No, I think.
So I have a twofold purpose for being here. One is to present the report to you, and the second is to ask you to continue the longstanding tradition of the NRC donating. In past years, it's been $3,000 a year to help support our Blanding's turtle conservation work. The money would go to Zoo New England and would be used for our field conservation work at Great Meadows. Specifically, we tend to dedicate the NRC funding to the nest protection, part of the nest protection effort, and then surveying those nests for the hatchlings as they're emerging.
Just a quick question. I know your work is focused on the Great Meadows Wildlife Refuge, but certainly across the river now between the town and Concord Land Conservation Trust and now Mass Audubon, there's a substantial portion of property there. Is there any plans or thoughts given to collaborating with the property owners there for further research?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Judy. Absolutely, and our Blanding's turtles, some of the Blanding's turtles, we've known this from the start, swim back and forth across the river and do use the October Farm riverfront wetlands on both Town of Concord property, Mass Audubon property. And we've trapped there in the past and trapped turtles. And this year, for the first time, we're proposing to release some of our head-started Blanding's turtles in the large wetland that is sort of immediately in front of you when you park your car at the parking area at the end of Balls Hill Road. And that wetland is primarily under Mass Audubon control. So the wetland seems to have the kind of structure that young Blanding's turtles like. It does have some good patches of buttonbush and other aquatic shrubs. So we're planning on releasing 8 head-started Blanding's turtles in that wetland this year with radio transmitters to see how they do.
Great, thanks.
And I'd just like to congratulate you on the report. I really enjoyed reading it. I learned a lot. Really, really excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I would share that same comment, Sarah. Thank you. I thought it was really educational, and it seems like a lot of the initiatives are quite successful.
Mhm.
So,
I never realized that turtles lived as long as they do. Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, we have quite a few of the females that we still are tracking were marked as adults, right? So minimum age generally of 18 years of age were marked as adults around 1971. So a lot of them are a good bit older than me.
Wow.
And could you just explain, I'm sorry if I missed this in the report, but how do you add the trackers? How do you attach them?
With epoxy. So they're attached on the turtles' backs, the
Okay.
kind of side edge of the back margin of their carapace, their shell, just with waterproof epoxy.
Mhm.
And then the whole package is actually quite easy to remove. All you need to do is get a point of something under the epoxy and the whole epoxy pops off. But it lasts pretty well. Occasionally, probably in about 15% of the cases, the epoxy falls off prematurely, but in most cases it lasts at least the whole 2 to 3 years that the battery in the radio tracker lasts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess open it up to any public comment on the initiative here for funding. Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll need a motion for this.
I make a motion to authorize the expenditure of $3,350 from the wetland account to be used for the Blandings Turtle Research and Protection Program.
Second.
Okay, we'll have the vote.
If I may, thank you,
Yes,
thank
please.
you very much. Just a quick note.
Yep.
So again, just following the past precedents, the $3,000 would be for specifically for the Blandings Turtle Project. The $350 would be for Wood Turtle Conservation Project in Concord, which is primarily over at Massport Land by Hanscom. And that's just for replacing radio transmitters on turtles that we find.
Okay. I think we could take the vote with that, though. Thank you for
Yeah.
that clarification.
You're welcome.
Greg,
Aye.
Judy,
Yes.
Nick, and Sarah,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Very welcome. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have, I believe, one continuance this evening. If someone wants to,
I make a
Provide a
motion.
motion?
I make a motion to continue until the April 7th, 2021 meeting. The Westchester Company, Lot 2A, Cayuga Road, file number 20-1.
Second.
okay, Nick,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
and Sarah.
Aye.
Sarah, you good?
Yes, did you hear me? Sorry, aye.
Sorry. And I'm an aye as well. Thank you. All right, new applications this evening. First one is the request for determination of applicability, 14 Lowell Road, RDA file number 21-2. So we have the applicant here to present this.
Good evening. For the
Evening.
record, I'm Dana Vesti, an environmental scientist with Ty and Bond. I'm here on the behalf of Boston Gas Company for the proposed project at 1400 Lowell Road. This involves installing a gas service main from the existing mains within the Millsack School facility north to the new cell tower base. There's going to be a generator, so the gas service line will connect to the generator, so it's continuously supplied. So this service line will be approximately 700 linear feet and involve excavating a 2-foot wide by 3-foot deep trench, placing the gas service line on the bottom and backfilling over it. All disturbed areas will be restored in kind. So there'll be approximately 532 square feet of temporary impacts to 100-foot buffer zone. We have conservatively assumed for part of it that it's going to overlap with the 100-foot vernal pool habitat buffer. And this area that overlaps will be an existing disturbed roadway. The proposed project will be an existing roadway. During construction, erosion controls will be installed at the edge of the roadway and by the cell tower to protect resource areas. And then, as I said, the disturbed areas will be restored in kind. So this will be the paved roadway and the gravel cell tower based. And then as a note, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the majority of this project would be considered exempt as a minor buffer zone activity as the installation of utilities within a paved roadway. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Commission for any questions.
Thank you. Yes, and just to reiterate, so the gas line is going, follows the path of the roadway by way of excavation and then goes right into the chained area where the cell tower is and whatnot.
Yeah, so there'll be, there is, I believe, like a little ramp going up to the cell tower from the paved roadway. And so we'll be going through that.
Okay.
We're not proposing anything outside of the fence line.
Great. Yeah, just a small, just can't really zoom in. So that's all for the question. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is based on where the proximate location of the generator. So it will be located within the, so they might move the trench a foot this way or a foot that way, depending on utilities and other conflicts.
Yeah, thank you. Any of the other?
Can I ask a question?
Of course. Yeah.
So Dana, do you see this area here that looks to be within a wooded area?
So that's actually, so that's the shadow. It's in the paved.
So it's still within, I see this is so this is the roadway here. So this is just a shadow. Okay, thank you.
Any of the other commissioners have a comment?
I was gonna, so that means that there's no expectation of disturbance of trees in this, when this is installed?
Correct. So it's going to be within the paved roadway, and the cell tower is was installed at least of my site visit, or a majority of it. So there's the gravel base. So we're just going to be going within those existing disturbed areas.
Okay, thank you.
And this generator is an emergency generator, which would be really intermittently run, correct?
I don't know the frequency of it run, but yes, it's for the emergency generator to
If they lose power, if they lose power, this would kick on. And does it have like a once a week startup? I mean, what I'm familiar with is it starts up at some point. This has been a controversial situation over there. So I just want to be aware that it does make noise, and that it's an intermittent noise, and it would be an emergency situation only.
I'm not aware of how frequently it's going to be start up, but it is to ensure that the cell tower would essentially have continuous power, whether it's from its original power source or an emergency this generator.
Well, I guess my point is, I just would want to, there's no way you're going to run this continuously and do away with the regular power. But should we put something in there that says that this is for backup only, so that nobody?
Is that within our jurisdiction?
I think because it's noise, and noise does affect the wetlands and the wildlife, it may be in our jurisdiction.
I think that's a stretch, in my opinion.
For this is for the gas line, and my understanding is the generator and the tower were permitted under the.
Were they already permitted? I didn't know that. If that's the case, then no issue.
So superseded order of conditions, DP number 1371364.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the commission side? Okay. Any comments regarding this application from the public? Okay, doesn't appear to be. So I think we have a recommended motion for this evening?
I recommend that we issue a negative determination number 3 with the following conditions. Number 1, a pre-construction site visit shall be held with DNR staff and the contractor to review erosion controls and limits of work. Number 2, stockpiling shall occur outside the 100-foot buffer zone. And number 3, after the project has been, there seems to be something missing here, Delia. Is this supposed to be a number that I
Is
only
it
have
just
1,
numbered
2,
wrong?
4.
So it's just numbered incorrectly. That
By
should
number
be number
3.
3.
Okay, and number 3, after the project has been completed, the applicant shall submit a letter to the NIC stating that all work has been conducted in accordance with all conditions of this determination of applicability. Any changes from the RDA shall be described.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. And the vote,
Aye.
Sarah? Nick?
Aye.
Thank you. Judy
Aye.
and Greg?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you. Have a good one.
I do the same.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
All right. Next up is notice of intent, 367 Cambridge Turnpike, DEP file number 137-1555. And as I understand it, there's been some field changes that have to be, I guess, put on a survey, and I guess this will probably be more discussed on the April 7th, but my understanding is the applicant's here this evening and perhaps wants to give a brief overview of the project. If we can limit it to that, that would be great.
Hi, Kyle Cormier with Oxbow Associates, representing the applicant, Todd, who is also in the meeting. And Matthew from Land Tech is also here, the surveyors and engineer on the project. Before I get started, we do have a plan hot off the press, and I would like to request permission to show that. Otherwise, we can just discuss the plan on the screen. And it shows the new wetland flags as well as the new calculations for the deck and addition for the proposed work.
So you can go ahead
Okay,
and share that,
Okay.
but you know, the commission has not had a chance to review it, so
Right.
I don't think we're going to get into any discussions about it. But if you want to share that as the most recent drawing, that's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead and share.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, probably an overview would be best since we haven't had a chance to look at the revised plans.
Understandable.
Thank you.
Can everyone see the plan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second. Okay, so the site has an existing single-family house, existing driveway with a forested periphery. There is an unnamed pond to the northeast, which isn't shown on this, and it's well 100 feet away from the project. We Oxbow flagged 1 through 9 BVW on the western side of the site. I did meet Colleen with the NRC staff out at the site, and we did revise flags 6, 5, and 4. Actually, this is the old plan, sorry.
Yeah, is it possible when you move your cursor to get rid of that yellow square? Because it's making it hard for me to see when you point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Kyle, while you do that, maybe I can introduce the project. Do you mind?
Sure.
So Matt Waterman with Land Tech, just to keep things moving, and I'll turn it back over to Kyle once he gets it up and running. But the gist of the proposal or the work within the buffer zone is converting an existing porch which is a 3-season porch, to a full addition, which would be 2 stories, a basement story, and then a first level story. And that's shown on this plan as where it says existing porch. That is the same size as the 3-season porch. It just gets 1 foot wider to the north and east, or to the upper right as you're looking at our plan. And it gets 1 foot wider over an existing deck area. So it's conceptually, or effectively the same size as the existing porch, which is a covered 3-season porch. And then we're reconstructing the deck, which is off the back of the house, and there's an existing deck that is effectively the same size as, just the existing deck is not square. It goes the same distance out away from the house. It just has chamfered corners, or the corners are cut at 45-degree angles. And so on the right-hand side of the deck, you can see an existing stairs that come off one of those corners. And then the other one closest to the wetlands, it's the line that is kind of 45-degree angle through our shaded, the proposed or the finished proposed deck and porch. But I'll turn it back over to Kyle. I just wanted to keep things moving. I didn't mean to interrupt Kyle at all.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you. And just to make a point, so the closest point, we are requesting a variance for this, for work within the 50-foot. The closest current existing structure is 31 feet and 7 inches. And the new proposed work is 34 feet and 1 inch. Actually, do I have those numbers right?
37.7.
Yes. And the new deck within the 50-foot is 13 square feet of impact within the 50-foot buffer. 16 square feet with the 1 foot bump out on the existing porch, which is over existing deck within the 50-foot. And there's a total of 38 square feet of deck that is going to be removed within the 50-foot. So it's actually a net gain of lawn within the existing 50, so or a reduction of deck within the 50 after the project is all said and done. So based on that, we believe that the new deck does not adversely affect the wetland resource area, since we're actually reducing the total amount of structure within the 50-foot. And any new work is no closer than existing structure on site. And with that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Well, I appreciate the overview. I'm not sure we'll get into questions until we, get this formally submitted for the April 7th meeting and discuss that in more detail at that point, once the commission's had time to review it a little bit more closely.
Okay.
But thank you for the overview and the discussion so far. All right. And I think with that, I don't think we'll be taking any commentary from the public as well. So we'll look forward to seeing you on the 7th, if that's what we're continuing to. Is that good with the applicant?
Hi, I'm Todd Kokoska. I'm here with my wife, Melody. We reside at 367 Cambridge. Generally, I'm fine with that approach. My only question would be, is there any, are there any preliminary concerns that we could take into account prior to the April meeting?
Well, I know that, again, this is within the 50-foot no build zone. So there's that to be considered. And I know that the commission has been taking up over the course of the past 2 or 3 meetings, the 50-foot no build policy. So, it's being just reviewed. So that may come into play. But as it stands now, I guess I wouldn't offer any commentary until we've had a chance to look at it a little bit closer.
Okay, fair enough. I was only asking for preliminary, but
Yep.
that's fine. That's a reasonable response. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Again, thank you. We'll plan on seeing you on the 7th.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Kyle, can you stop sharing, please?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Next one up, again, RDA for 675 Monument Street, RDA file number 21-3.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
I'm Rich Kirby from LEC Environmental Consultants, and with me tonight is the property owner, Megan Pasquina. And we filed this RDA for temporary construction access within the outer portion of the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands for a house project at 675 Monument Street in Concord. This property is in the northern portion of town. I'm sure you're familiar with Monument Street. Anyway, the property is just shy of 3 acres. And the top right or southeast corner of the property contains this existing structure here with the driveway access from Monument Street. Now, you'll see a number of colors in this plan, and the purple color is the existing original house, which was probably built in the early 1900s, late 1800s. I forget when precisely it was built. But the section in the back, the red outline, that is an existing attached garage and living space addition that was constructed at some point after, within the last several decades, let's say. What Megan is proposing to do is demolish the portions of the structure, unoriginal, outlined in red, and replace them with new garage and living space addition and a wooden deck off the back of the house. So the garage and living space would be the green area and the Kelly green area. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And the wooden deck would be the lighter green area off the bottom there. The dashed green line that surrounds the developed portion of the site is the erosion control. We're proposing 12-inch compost filter tubes. And the bottom left or northwest corner of that work area, temporary construction access area, is within the outer portion of the 100-foot buffer zone. You can see the buffer zone line bifurcating that area. And that 100-foot buffer zone line extends from a bordering vegetated wetland located to the northwest. This wetland was delineated in 2011 by B&C Group. And the commission reviewed the line, and it was approved as part of a project associated with a previous owner. And so what we did, because we were in the middle of February when there was some snow on the ground, we had asked Stamsky and McNary to reestablish those flags as they relate to this portion of the site. And we reviewed them. We were able to get into the soil with our augers. We weren't able to see the vegetation. Obviously, with the snow cover, this is all a field area. And we did make a minor modification to flag 4B and established flag 4BR, which is that flag right there. And it's roughly 7 feet higher or further up gradient than the previous flag 4B. Little to no effect on the extent of buffer zone on the site, but we wanted to make sure that the delineation was accurately represented. So given that we are so far away with our work, it is really only for temporary construction access within existing lawn and landscaped areas, which will all be replaced in kind. We filed an RDA to get approval from the commission to do this work. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thanks, Rich. And appreciate you following the RDA for something like this. It looks straightforward from my eyes, but any of the commission have any comments on it? Okay. Any members of the public have any comments on this? Okay. Well, hearing none, I think we have a recommendation and motion this evening.
I move that we issue a negative determination, number 3 for RDA file 21-3 at 675 Monument Street with the following conditions. Number 1, a pre-construction site visit shall be held with DNI staff and the contractor to review erosion controls and limits of work. Number 2, stockpiling shall occur outside the 100-foot buffer zone. And number 3, after the project has been completed, the applicant shall submit a letter to the NIC stating that all work has been conducted in accordance with all conditions of this determination of applicability. Any changes from the RDA shall be described.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. And we'll take the vote. Greg,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and Sarah,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. Thank you, Rich.
Great. Thank you all very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. All right, moving to the next hearing. It is a NOI 23 Warner Street, DEP file number 137-1550. And Dave, you're here to introduce this?
Yes,
Okay.
I am Dave Crossman, B&C Associates, representing the owner, Edmund Sterlazzi. Mr. Sterlazzi is proposing to put a 2-story addition on the back of his half of the duplex. The area that you see to the right of the proposed addition, the deck and that little bump out, that's exactly what's on his side of the house right now. He's removing the deck and that half of the bump out and replacing it with the 2-story addition, which is 24 by 17. It's going to be on a slab, so there's not going to be any real change in topography there. The area is outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, but obviously within the 100-foot buffer zone. And after many attempts to get the survey right, we have the 100-year floodplain shown on there as it exists, and we are actually outside of the 100-year floodplain. The corner of the proposed addition does fall within the Conservancy overlay district, the floodplain conservancy district there. So I have already informed Mr. Sterlazzi he'll need to get a permit for that work. I did walk the wetland boundary with Colleen, and we really didn't make any changes to that wetland line. It's kind of an odd piece of property. There's about a 6-foot strip in the back right corner there that actually, if you go down to the bottom right corner of the sheet, you can see the whole property. It's quite a bit of land back there that's almost all wetland back out there. So
yeah,
we're not proposing obviously any work any closer than what we are right now. I know Delia had asked about some mitigation. There is, in that little strip that goes out there, there's actually like a knotweed tunnel when it's in full bloom. It is all crushed down now. It was crushed down with the snow when Colleen and I were out there, but during the summer when I flagged this, or last fall, it was a tunnel that you had to bend over and walk underneath all the knotweed. We can remove some of that. Unfortunately, most of it happens to be on the neighboring properties. But we can remove what we can get at on our property and replace that with some upland shrubs in that area, or plant them elsewhere if that's what the commission would like to see. So, but that's basically all that he's asking for is to put the addition on the back there.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Again, seems relatively straightforward. I guess what's missing at the moment is I guess a more delineated mitigation plan right, square footages and proposal of how you'd like to plant that with natives, et cetera. Any
So
other?
Ed, can I just,
Sure.
I talked with the building department about this project, and so this is the 124 contour here, which is the elevation of the bordering land subject to flooding, which is the equivalent of the floodplain conservancy district. The engineer has extrapolated this line as the floodplain conservancy district. It's a graphic representation. Since this line has been surveyed, the building department wants to see that this line is removed because it's conflicting with, these lines should be the same. So once this line has been surveyed, the floodplain conservancy district is the same thing as the 100-year floodplain. So Dave, if you can just relay that to the surveyor, that graphically represented floodplain conservancy district denoted here, that should be removed.
Okay.
And this should just be noted as the 100-year floodplain, as well as the floodplain conservancy district.
Okay.
Same line. It's the same thing.
We'll see how long that takes.
I did already relay that to him about a month ago. So,
Great.
and this is the plan that we got. So maybe you'll have better luck convincing
All
him
right.
to
So
get rid of that line.
does that mean that you no longer need, you said it in your description that, Dave, that you would need some sort of permit because there was an overlap there, but that's now not needed. Is that correct?
Not needed.
Not
Great.
needed, right?
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So maybe that will motivate him, Dave.
Yeah. All right, and I can prepare the mitigation. I don't need it. Well, I should put that on the new plan as well, but
Yeah, it should be on a plan.
okay. If there's anything else that you'd like to see,
I think the commissioners are good. Anyone from the public have any commentary on this application? All right, well, hearing none. So Dave, I'll assume you're good to extend to April 7?
yes.
Okay, thank you. All
I'm
right.
sorry, Ed. I'm sorry, Ed. Could I just add one more thing?
Sure.
That just as a heads up, Dave, that we think that you will probably want to have the erosion controls survey located so that there's no encroachment into the floodplain. And the commission's order will include that as a special condition, but just so that you are aware that that's something that, just want to make sure you're close to the floodplain.
Yes.
Well, is it better to stake the floodplain? If you stake the floodplain, then you know you got to have, otherwise you don't know if it was, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I guess 6 of one, half dozen the other.
Exactly. Yeah. Either one would be fine, just to make sure that.
All right.
Okay, we're good. Thank you, Delia. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you next meeting.
All right, see you then. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, then we move to we have a continuance, Middlesex School, NOI. Oh, no, not the NOI, I'm sorry. I'm going backwards on this. No.
Yeah, you're right.
It's an NOI.
100. Yep, DEP file 137-1545. And I know there's some outstanding issues. I think that the gap's narrowing. I think we've made it seems like a lot of good headway. A few outstanding things that could be cleaned up. And who wants to update us on where we're at? Would that be you, Ryan, to kick it off, or Steve?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Steve McEwen with the Middlesex School, here tonight with Ryan Chmielewski from Weston and Sampson, as well as Marie Ruderman. Ryan is landscape architect by trade, and Marie is a toxicologist. A few updates, as you said, to the planting plans and as well as stormwater management per DBW comments. And I know Ryan's able to give more detail on where we stand.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to figure out how to disconnect the other meeting at the same time.
Okay.
Just bear with me 1 sec.
All right.
About, infiltration, somewhat close to the wetlands, not terribly close. Just curious how that works. So yeah, maybe in reverse order, the slide that we're on is all of the additives we have. So we don't put fertilizer any.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find everybody. There we go. Yeah, thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. And I also really appreciate your flexibility in adjusting the agenda to accommodate my needs. Much appreciated. If I had not done that, I would not have been able to do both. So, so we've gone through the previous comments. We made our submission. We received some comments regarding stormwater design from the town engineer. Since then, we've made some minor adjustments to the plans and are in coordination with the town engineer. I requested that my civil engineer speak the language with him because I wouldn't be able to deliver the message appropriately. And it seems that they're on the same page. And we're ready to submit. We were actually going to submit today until we got the request not to submit based on a couple of the outstanding items from the commission. So in regards to the items from the commission, the additional stakes will add to the plans. The size of the plants, everything was going to be bare root plants, small in nature for for survivability over such a large square footage, and B, really getting those bare root plants in a soil medium that's existing. They should be able to take off rather quickly without a lot of serious attention if we really pay attention to the timing of the plantings. There's a question about the 4 inches of mulch. Why put that down before rather than plant first? We have about 3,200 plants going in, and to plant and then those smaller plants and then go in with the layer of mulch that's necessary, it's more disruptive to the plants. So you lay your bed of mulch down, you scrape out the area of mulch, you dig in your plants, tuck the mulch around the plants, but not burying them too much. And then that way you could work from the wetland edge out towards the playing fields and really back your way out of the site.
So just to clarify, Ryan, the question was more about the use. So it was proposed to have 4 inches of wood chip mulch.
Yep.
And we were not clear on why that was proposed. Usually we don't see 4 inches of wood chips being put down. They draw nitrogen out of the soil. If there's a compost mulch or something like that that's proposed, that would be something different. But to have 4 inches of wood chips placed around mitigation plantings, we just were not clear on why that was being proposed. That's what we were looking for clarity on.
Yeah, that was a recommend. Sorry, I just figured out my video there. Hello, everyone.
You're way ahead of me. I have not figured mine out yet.
The recommendation came through Bartlett for the 4 inches of wood chips. Really it's about getting a mulch coverage on top of the areas that are bare soil to keep the weeds down and keep them out. And that 4 inches is really the optimal depth. In commercial jobs, you see landscape contractors try to get away with a dusting to 2 inches, but really 4 will help A, keep the moisture in, and B, keep the weed mat down to a minimum.
Right. So just to the point of the nitrogen, wood chips take out nitrogen from the soil. So it is not a recommended approach that we would use or want to see being used in a wetlands buffer zone application. So either, some justification for why that is proposed, from a written justification, or just to replace that with a compost mulch, which is a different, compost versus a wood chip mulch.
Yeah, and similarly, the composting process, yes, agree. So, Steve, we could, is there a specific type of mulch, or sorry, the composted mulch that you would like to see?
We don't have a specification for it, but if there was, it is something that is not just a wood chip mulch, something that is an organically derived, that has some broken down component to it. And, I mean, you could propose something that is,
Sure.
a composted mulch versus a wood chip mulch.
Sure.
Okay, Ryan, you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve? Okay. Steve's good, I'm good.
Yeah, thanks. No, and again, just to reiterate, that came from Andy at Bartlett Tree, that standard, and I understand the nitrogen. The biggest concern was the amount of invasives that are there, and really wanted to ensure there was a base layer. I assume a compost base achieves that just as well.
So that may be the reason that they were proposing the wood chip mulch, but that's not really a reasonable way to address the invasives. So have them just kind of revisit that and propose a way to manage those invasives in a way that allows, kind of more of a holistic approach.
Sure. Yeah, they help prevent, they don't stop completely, so there will be periodic inspection needed anyway. So that could be part of the operations and maintenance plans of that area.
Yep.
There was a question about cutting and painting the ends with glyphosate. In the Bartlett description, they did recommend doing that. They didn't name glyphosate. Sometimes commissions shy away from that, but if it's in a controlled application with a wand, then it's very effective. So we could add that language.
So that would be fine to add that. The commission does approve stem swipe and cut stem applications, just not foliar of glyphosate, and if you have bittersweet triclopyr. So that would be an acceptable approach.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Would you like me to review any of the other plan changes or anything like that?
I didn't have any particular issues to review on the other plans. Any of the commissioners have any other questions, observations? Okay. Anyone in the public have any comments on this?
Ed, this is Mark Miles, if you can hear me.
Okay, go ahead, Mark, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, it's the first time I've recollected hearing the word glyphosate, and I wonder if you could just, if the applicants could just elaborate a little bit further on what the use would be and why there are no suitable alternatives to that.
Sure. The glyphosate is a non-selective herbicide. And with the aggressiveness of most invasive species, it's been a proven way to get rid of the invasives in the most effective manner. Even if you physically remove, which we are doing, but also, you know, we want to be sensitive to the microbes that are in the soil in that wetlands area. So to go in and do complete destruction of ripping everything out is not really an environmentally sensitive approach to mitigating those invasive species. So the cut and paint application is the preferred approach.
Okay.
Ed, I see Sharon
Yeah.
and Sharon McGregor and Janet Miller have their hands
Yep.
up as well.
Yeah, please, Sharon.
Hi, thank you. I'm also having camera problems, so I apologize. I have a new camera.
Tonight.
It's not working as a new camera should. So one question, I don't know that it's ever been clarified what the total volume of soil to be excavated is going to be. We know, as I understand from prior meetings, you've talked about using it on site, but what's the total volume of soil to be excavated, topsoil, as I understand it? And then I have, that's a question, I have a few comments after that.
The total volume, I don't think we've done a full earthwork analysis at this point. I know the cost estimator has, and I can pull that information up as we speak. Do you want to ask the other questions while I'm?
Well, that's the only question I have. It's important to know what that is. I mean, that I don't know if the earth removal bylaw is triggered by this or not, but you know, we want to know what the volume amount is. Generally speaking, the organization I'm working with in town, the Grass Fields for Safe Sports, we feel that this project, the applicant has not undertaken sufficient thoughtful alternative analyses that explores the options to minimize environmental impacts overall. That really needs to be the aim of every project that comes before the town. You have to minimize impacts, and this is not minimizing impacts to the extent that is needed, and by virtue of the project itself, that it's artificial turf. We know you have the proposal before the NRC, that's 2 proposed fields that will be constructed from a plastic carpet and plastic beads as fill. And this will replace a lot of high volume of soil and grass with plastic, with the goal of having the fields that can be played on while wet and providing a more predictable sports schedule for teams and coaches. But we don't believe that the advantages gained are worth the negative impacts of this project for 4 primary reasons that Mark, I think, will address 2 of them, and Janet will as well. I want to emphasize that the overall impacts to local climate, as well as contributing to the general climate crisis, are extremely important for any applicant for a project to consider. Locally, you are affecting the microclimate, the local climate in that area in terms of removing the ecosystem function by taking out that much grass and soil. It's destroying an ecosystem that performs carbon, water, nutrient, and energy cycling. And you're affecting the small water cycles in the area. And these changes are subtle, but they'll be felt by particularly the people in attendance at these games and the players themselves. So that's localized, but in general, this project, of course, when you add it up with so many others that have a great impact on the environment, it does contribute measurably to the overall climate crisis, which I want to say, we are in the decade that we have to get us out of crisis. And so everybody has to do that project by project. So I urge the applicant on behalf of our organization to much better minimize the impacts that you have, and to look more thoughtfully about the alternative for organically managed grass. It's working in other places, it can work, and you may have to make some compromise on the playing, but not that much. And I think it's worth doing that if we want to hand the students that are playing on these fields a healthy environment, and to help prevent climate catastrophe decision by decision. So do not underestimate the importance of your project and the decisions that are being made for this project, because collectively these kinds of decisions add up to enormous impact. And this is the only decade we have to address that as a planet, and we have to start locally. So please do a further alternatives analysis. It's more thoughtful and really looks hard at the low impact alternatives, namely grass field, natural organic turf. And you'll get your playing in, and the students will be happy and grateful.
Thank you. Janet?
I think Sharon made a lot of good points there. I just want to ask a specific question. Recently, I read that the compound 6-PPD, which is used as an antioxidant or antioxidant, and it's used in both plastics and rubber. And it degrades in the environment to a quinone, and that has caused major fish die-offs, the coho salmon. So what I want to know is, I mean, if you do end up putting plastic down and contributing to the plastic pollution of this world, that it's not going to poison the environment when inevitably some of that plastic gets into the wetlands. So that's my question. Compound is 6-PPD, and I can look up the actual chemical formula if you wish. But
Yeah, Marie, are you on?
Hello. Hi, I'm on. Hold on.
Sure.
Hello. I'm Marie Rudiman. I'm a toxicologist with Weston and Sampson. I actually did look up the, it's 6, hold on. Let me open up my document here. Hold on.
it's 1,3-dimethyl-butyl and phenol phenylene.
Right.
That's its full name.
6-PPD quinone.
6-PPD quinone is what it changes to in the environment. It's not what to put down.
Right, right. And actually, the initial, let me just read this here for a sec. So the 6-PPD quinone is a product of crumb rubber breakdown. I actually read through the studies that were dealing with the salmon die-off in Washington State. So researchers at the University of Washington in Tacoma and Washington State University Puyallup have been investigating the annual die-off of coho salmon native to the Pacific Northwest in urban waterways. The annual die-off appeared to be tied to stormwater runoff. And the team of researchers found that a component of rubber within tire dust, 6P phenylene diamine.
I mean,
Yes,
you're enough your background to know how to pronounce it.
right. When exposed to ground level ozone, it oxidizes into the 6-ppd quinone, and 6-ppd quinone has been found to be acutely toxic to the coho salmon, causing death in the juvenile salmon at pretty low concentrations, 1 microgram per liter. But that is from crumb rubber tire dust from roadways. We are not proposing to put in
I understand
rubber.
that.
We're using a different infill.
But I looked up the compound and it said it's also used in plastics. This 6-ppd. So what
The study was pretty clear that
I understand what the study was studying road dust, and this compound is put into tires. But my question is this same chemical put into any of the plastics that you're proposing to put down?
it is not, I believe, in the plastics. It's in rubber products. And the EcoFill that we're using is a synthetic rubber that does not have.
It does not have any antioxidant or anti-ozonant added to it?
I do not believe so.
Could you check, please?
Yeah, we could check. We actually went back to the manufacturer and they said they did not believe it was in their product. I mean, I could go back and say, do you have any proof such as, like a chemical lab data or anything like that. But, this, when I researched it, was a product of tire dust from roadways. And we have many roadways here in Massachusetts as well. And the tire dust is going to come more from roadways than it would from the synthetic turf field. And the other issue here is that the 6-ppd quinone has been found to be acutely toxic to coho salmon, but it doesn't appear to have the same effect on other salmon species or on other types of fish that were tested. It had little effect on chum or sockeye. And, here in the Northeast, we don't have coho salmon. I mean, that's not saying, it's possible that it could be toxic to other types of fish, maybe, but we haven't had the same sort of die-off issue that they were having in the Northeast or in the Northwest. I have to think, as I reviewed the data, it seemed like a very regional thing to the Pacific Northwest. Because we have plenty of tire dust in our surface water because we have so many roadways, and we haven't seen the same type of die-off phenomena.
We have not, but we don't have the same economically valuable fish that would be so noticeably killed off. Anyway, I think I made my point.
Thank you, Janet. Mark, you got a hand up?
Yes, I do. Thanks for letting me speak a second time.
Yep.
And again, this one probably is for Marie. Well, I'll let you decide who should answer, but it's a toxicological question. This being a plastic field, both infill and the carpet itself. And I'm wondering what in your alternatives assessments you have learned regarding the content of this product of phthalates, plasticizers, and in particular, I want to point to brominated and fluorinated, polybrominated, polyfluorinated flame retardants, which and what their impact would be on human health. And in particular, I want to draw your attention to a study that I just became aware of just this week that indicates that in fact it's very low doses of polybrominated and polyfluorinated flame retardants that has an adverse impact as an endocrine disruptor on girls. It apparently leads to a much earlier onset of puberty and mammary development, which exposes girls to a higher level or a higher potential for breast cancer later in life. And as I say, this is very, very recent, and I'm sure it's a limited study. But I wonder if you could just tell us what your alternatives assessment learned about these kinds of substances and what you concluded should be, appropriate for your determination on the type of field.
Well, polyfluorinated alkyl substances and polybrominated alkyl substances are sometimes added to carpets as a stain and water resistant coating. Weston & Sampson has gone back to all of our manufacturers and made sure that they're not manufactured and they do not contain PFAS in them. We don't want to install any carpets with PFAS in them. And the manufacturer has given us information on both the carpet and the infill that has shown, the data has shown that it's all non-detect, they don't use, and they also provided a statement indicating that they don't use PFAS in their carpets or infills. We're very aware of
Marie,
PFAS.
Go ahead, Delia.
I was just going to say thank you, Marie, for responding to that, but also thanks, Mark, for bringing up that question. But it's not a question that is relevant to the NRC purview. The NRC does not regulate human health. So impacts to wetlands, wildlife, stormwater, those are what the commission is looking at and what we need to keep this conversation focused around.
Is there any other agency within the town for which such a question would be?
Appreciate keeping us focused.
So Board of Health regulates impacts to human health.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. One question I have is that I think last time we left it, there was going to be some additional alternatives analysis on the turf fields. Brian, do you have that? Have we run through? I don't think we've run through that to date. I think that was just a follow-up on top of your previous alternative analysis.
Something just happened.
Do you want to share a screen, Ryan, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll have to pull it up. It was done. It was completed by a third. It was completed by a third party, an independent professional. So I'd be paraphrasing on what they had to say. So do you have, Delia, do you have the Gale memo?
Delia, do you have that by chance?
If not, I'm pulling it up.
And Delia's on mute. I don't know if she realizes.
Ah,
I recall
Sorry,
seeing there was one dated in mid-February that was posted on the current meeting documents.
yeah,
I'm just looking for that now, so just give me 1 second.
sure. Thank you.
To pull that down. What is the, Ryan, what is the date? You guys have submitted a number of things.
Yeah, it was.
What would you like to show?
This one's dated February 5th. Steve, is that the latest one?
And what is it? We've got site plan, planting plan, alternative infill narrative, stormwater.
Yes,
So
alternative infill narrative.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. 1 second. I think we have this. So you can't see this, can you? Sorry.
Not yet.
Okay.
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 It's on page 2 of that February 5th document.
Okay, I gotta see. What did you say, Steve?
Oh, it's on, yeah, it's on page 2 of that February 5th document. Yeah, that's the correct refiling.
And I apologize. I'm jumping around here, but
Yeah,
okay, here we go.
That's it.
Sorry. Okay, so I think this is what you're looking for. And tell me where you would like to be.
I mean, just in general, to paraphrase, they talked about an organically maintained field and grass fields versus an artificial surface. And they went through the pros and cons of them compared together. And what it boiled down to was, and this is kind of the reason why Middlesex is really wants a dependable playing surface, that the grass fields are limited in their use in timing of years and during inclement weather, early spring especially, and also late fall. And they actually quoted the Sports Turf Managers Association that a single use of the field in a saturated condition, according to this STMA, could ruin the soil structure for the entire season. And then you're on the operation and maintenance plan of trying to get that soil structure back to its health and potentially never recover and have to replace. They also had some dialect about the organically maintained fields. While they do provide a good stand of grass, they are very limited in nature as they do hold water. And this was from Randy Peteo and Adam Alnowitz from the Springfield Park and Recs Department. you know, they end up having to shut down fields for several days, and they actually use their synthetic turf fields to minimize the amount of use on the naturally maintained or organically maintained sports fields. And they do require quite a bit of extra maintenance in terms of core aeration, top dressing, overseeding, etc. And even with all that, you're still your use is still limited. To me, that's what the overall analysis, the overall message was. And a lot of the organic infills that are out today are new in technology and haven't really been proven, especially in the Northeast and freezing conditions. There's been a lot of issues in terms of dependability, playability, you know, usability from the sports side. So really, the school is interested in using a tried and true sports surfacing system that's going to meet their performance needs.
So Ryan, can you just clarify why that document, what you needed from that document, so we can point to anything that was relevant?
Well, I think Mr. Nardi, you asked what the alternatives analysis was and what the further information. Was there anything specific that you would like, or just wanted the overall rundown of the report?
I was looking more for the overall rundown of the report, since it was a follow-up. I know you had analyzed some artificial surfaces initially and only touched on kind of the turf fields. Appreciate you going back out and providing a further analysis in terms of that perspective and some of the cost attendant to that.
For me, it did reassure me that a thorough analysis had been done. It was helpful for me to read the pros and cons for every single option. So thank you. I found it very helpful.
But understandably so, the real crux of it is the benefit of time usability is weighted very heavily, and that's understandable. They're play fields. I think some of our friends from the public are questioning whether that's being weighted too much versus the other impacts that would come about. I mean, I would say if you're using as your basic goal hours of usability, I think it's a no-brainer to say that it would be a man-made product. There would be other ways of looking at it. I've read the Gale thing and I do understand it. I think it did a nice job. But that's where I've already spoken on the fact that I would not want an artificial turf field there. But that's not my purview in this position to vote against you guys just because I don't want it if you pass muster. One thing I did want to bring up at some point, and I thought of it a couple meetings ago, but I don't think I brought it up, is that if at any point, whatever, and we're discussing what's involved in terms of the chemical nature of these products, if at any point in the future it is deemed by EPA or maybe even the DEP that something in there is harmful enough where they no longer sanction it to be used, many times when that happens, what's already in place gets to stay that way. Do you think the school, Stephen, would be willing in a relatively short period of time, 2 years, change from whatever got determined to be problematic? Would you think the school would be willing to take the turf off if it got put into that category?
I think certainly. I think it's one of the reasons why we're interested in a proven product, quite honestly.
Oh, I understand. No, I appreciate that very much. I get that. It's just that we're evolving in all these studies, and it's just as a layperson, and I'm sure you're the same way, Stephen. Neither one of us are professionals in it. But I'm just saying, if something were proven that's in that field, that wouldn't be allowed at that date, 2025. You know, would the school look at instead of saying, well, because it's grandfathered, we can keep it, would they be willing to take it out? You don't need to answer that right now.
Yeah,
It's just
I mean, certainly
a
it's a
thought I want you to
hypothetical.
think about, because that could come down with all these studies coming up. What if it proves that something there is problematic, you know?
So Greg, that could also be included as a special condition.
Yeah, and
right?
and Delia, I thought you had mentioned in a previous discussion that Fenn had some condition like that if it was proven to be harmful to the environment.
Right. So I don't remember right off the top of my head, but the Fenn condition was something along the lines of if the fields were determined to be ecologically problematic, that they had to go through a process of receiving approval from the NRC to remove those fields. So I had to go through another, notice of intent process.
It was just, I wasn't actually making it pointed that, I needed an answer right now, Stephen. I just thought, think about that. If that should happen, what would the school's stance be on that, I mean, I just think it's a fine line here that we're staying on our side of the line if we approve this, because we don't have any reason not to.
No, I mean,
under our purview, but I'm thinking downstream if it happened, anyways, I'll shut up.
May I make a comment, since that was my question that I had asked about the alternatives analysis? Sharon McGregor.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins, for that comment. I think it's very important. And all of us who do this on a daily basis, we've seen consultants write their alternatives analysis based on the support of the applicant. And I'm not convinced that what they are writing is really balanced in terms of the overall benefits versus the negatives of this using this turf. So I would like to ask the NRC if there's any chance you could do an independent assessment of your own by actually going to the towns, speaking to the towns who are being successful using the natural sustainable turf, which clearly would meet the town's sustainability principles, which every project should be evaluated through that screen. If there's any way you can do that, do your own assessment, because towns are successfully doing it. They're doing it because they want to be on the right side with respect to the environment, public health, and the climate. And I think that you would be interested to see how successful they've been and see whether this could be applied in this case.
Well, again, that appears to be a fair amount of work. And again, I don't know the precedent for that, but I'm not sure we would necessarily have the staff to go and research that. Delia, any precedent towards that? Or I think we usually have the applicant provide, engineered commentary and analysis, and that we weigh. But I'm not sure we do it independently.
Sharon, it's a great comment. And I think the town would love to be able to do that and collect that information, but we don't have the resources to do that. And we would rely on outside sources to do that, or, a grant or, some sort of funding to be able to do that. But unfortunately, we just don't have the resources to collect that information.
But it really boils down to how much weight you give to different outcomes. I mean, if you're looking to play 300 days a year on a field, and that's your goal, then clearly there isn't any organic turf that is going to work, Sharon. That's kind of my point here. You get out, and it's your point too. You get out of the study what you wanted to get out. And I'm not insulting Gale Associates or any of the professionals here, but you look at it and you say, well, I need this many playing days. what's my best product, and what they're putting down, Middlesex, might be the best product because that is the goal they're shooting for, and they're not waiting something else more environmentally friendly to offset that. And towns might easily weigh in their own fields, weigh that in, and it may be economic decisions, everything else could be weighed totally differently than a private entity like Middlesex. I have a hard time, in other words, voting against the field just because I don't like it. If it's a recognized and accepted material, it's a very difficult proposition for us unless we had some obvious thing that was problematic to the wetlands.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I understand. I agree.
Hey,
Oh, go
Sharon,
ahead.
Nick, go ahead. You just had a comment.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a requirement for a large number of playing days, and you have to do it with natural fields, and you wind up consuming a lot more land in artificial fields, it's not clear that's a net benefit either. Also, I haven't heard enough said about the required use of pesticides, herbicides, chemicals, fertilizers to maintain those fields. It's not going to just happen.
Yeah.
I garden. That stuff doesn't just happen. It's
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sharon.
Good point, Nick.
So I'm sorry, Nick, Mr. Pappas, you were talking about the maintenance of the natural turf?
Yes.
Yes, and that's why I'm suggesting that if you could, even phone calls to the towns that are successfully using natural turf, organic, regenerative grass, deep-rooted grasses, you will be enlightened and really see how that can work. But I do understand, and I agree also with Mr. Higgins, that it's really what you weigh, what you prioritize. And so we're asking that in this particular moment, we need to prioritize the environment. There is no question about it. If there is some loss of playing time, that is a small sacrifice to protect the environment. We're in this decade that this is the make or break decade. I'm not exaggerating.
I think we've heard this.
Talk about playing days. You're going to have your days playing time reduced over this decade by just what's going on with the climate, and just we're saying do your part to try to change that scenario. So you have to do the right thing, and many other applicants around the world have to do the right thing. So I'll close with this. You've been at a baseball game, and there's a wave. Somebody stands up and it starts a wave, and then the second person, and then there's 10, there's 50, there's 100, goes on and on. Think of yourself as the beginning of that wave. And it's hard to stand out there alone and do it first, but give it some thought, consider that, because that's what we need. We need a wave, a full wave to get this moving so that all of our decision that we make, whether you're an applicant for a project or you're choosing what products to buy for your home, a corporate boardroom, all of our decisions have to be grounded first and foremost in the climate screen, through the climate screen and the ecosystem, ecology, environment screen. Those must be our priority considerations, and everything else comes after that, everything. So I urge the applicant to do that, be one of the first, start the wave. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Judy?
No, I don't. No.
You're all set?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. I assume there's, again, cleanup on some of the storm water issues, and of course, more clarification on the invasives or the mulch, etc. So I assume we'll continue this to the April 7th hearing. Steve, you okay with that? Okay. Thank you. We'll see you on
Yeah, thank you. We will have it. The stormwater stuff is already done, and Bartlett will annotate the record that's on file.
And Delia, remind me that'll have to be in by, is it this Friday or next Friday, given the April 7th date?
Right. It's actually next Friday because we have 3 weeks in between our hearings right now. Next Friday.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, moving on. We've got a close an issue for previous 160 Range Road.
I make a motion to close and issue an order of conditions for 160 Range Road, DEP file 1371551 with findings A, standard conditions 1 through 19, and special conditions 20 through 55.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. And the vote, Greg?
Aye.
Judy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Okay. And then other business. 177 Barnesdale Road, enforcement owner. I see Scott there.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Yes, I'm here representing 177 Barnes Hill Road. After the enforcement order draft was sent to Mr. Brant Johnson, the owner, I have spoken with him. I have spoken with the project attorney, and he advised that we did not need to have the applicant here at this hearing tonight. So one of the first things I'd like to do is just request the notice of intent that was submitted, that is withdrawn. So that's one topic. And generally, we agree with the terms of the enforcement order and would like to proceed as soon as possible. However, we request that the NRC consider substituting the enforcement order with a memorial letter with the same conditions in it. And if I could just summarize what the steps would be to get the site back into compliance, because there's been a couple of different options that we've discussed in the past. And that would be number one, going out in the field and digging a couple more holes through the stone to really determine where the edge of the wetlands are. Some of these are redundant with the steps that were provided in the enforcement order, but let me just one at a time here. And then we would confirm the restoration area, the square feet in that location with the NRC staff to determine, all right, where was the wetlands soils underneath this stone before it was placed here, so we can get a quantify how many square feet that is. And then with oversight by Oxbow Associates, we would work with a contractor to remove the stone from that area and use a screening apparatus to try to shake the loam out of there and just get the stone out. Remove all the stone from the wetland, smooth it over, restore it with some native seed mix suitable for the pasture that it's in, photo document this whole process and report it to the NRC staff. And then of course have some follow-up monitoring, stabilize the make sure the surface is stabilized before the erosion control barriers are removed. I don't think I mentioned adding erosion control barriers before the work started, but that goes without saying. And then we would do, of course, additional field evaluations. And if there was any monitoring needed in the future, we could do that too. But we're not talking about leaving the stone in place and creating a new wetland on the other side of the field, which we had discussed at one point. We'd like to just get it out of there and be done with it. Get the enforcement order lifted if it was to be issued. So that sums up my presentation. Any questions you have, I'm ready for them.
Thanks, Scott. One question to Delia. Delia, are you okay with substituting the enforcement order for a letter memorializing the steps?
At this point, I would not recommend that. This has been going on since April of last year, and we have issued letters and we have issued, I have issued letters and emails and directives, and they have not been followed. I think at this point that an enforcement order is the appropriate approach. It puts it on notice with DEP as well as Natural Heritage and gives clear guidance to the applicant on what steps need to be taken. So I strongly recommend that the commission issue an enforcement order with whatever guidance. Scott, you're saying now that the applicant is looking to remove the fill. And a week or two ago, or a month ago, he was interested in having that remain in place. And I shared with the commission 2 opportunities for how those enforcement orders could proceed. But I strongly recommend enforcement order at this point.
Okay, Judy?
I want to echo that point. I'm disappointed that the Mr. Johnson, it's been almost a year, and I feel as a commissioner, he has not taken seriously our comments and the gravity of the situation. I guess I would say he hasn't proven in my mind, he hasn't shown in my mind, to come in with a point of view of people want to do the right thing. Unfortunately, through his actions, I've not seen him to be a good partner in doing this. And I feel that if we didn't issue an enforcement order, there's no reflection on you, Scott. I'm skeptical that this would move forward and be resolved.
Thank you, Judy. Any other comments from the commission on this? Okay. Any comments from the public on it? All right. And Delia, reading through the enforcement orders, I think it lays out a clear path based on the choice the homeowner and Scott is suggesting here. So, and to issue the enforcement order, Delia, I assume we would need a vote of the commission?
Yes, so you would need a vote of the commission, and you have 2 avenues that you can pursue. So one is if the homeowner wishes to simply remove the fill that he placed in wetlands and floodplain, then no survey plan is going to be necessary, but there's going to be some steps that he has to go forward with. Scott would be involved in that, flagging the wetlands, identifying the extent of the gravel. We would review that in the field. He can also proceed under a process where the gravel remains in place, which I think is what he's interested in seeing, so that those areas that are, as far as violations are concerned, this is pretty minimal. He could leave that gravel in place. He could excavate out an area of wetland replacement. It does have to be shown on a survey plan because it's wetland resource area alteration, it's floodplain alteration. But I think it's manageable. And I think that gets him to where he needs to be. It's a higher level of work that he needs to do, but it's also something that the commission can approve. So those are the 2 enforcement order options that are available. And I guess I would ask you, Scott, I don't see the homeowner on the call,
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So maybe you can speak for him, and I don't know if you can, but what is going to be his preference?
The preference is to remove the stone from the wetland area.
Okay.
Okay.
keeping it as simple as possible.
What is
Okay.
I assume if we vote to vote for a violation here, is that something that gets recorded in the registry of deeds?
It doesn't unless you want it to. It does not get recorded as a matter of, automatically. It doesn't.
I
So-
guess I'm being somewhat naive, but on the commission, this is the first one I think been directly involved in.
Yep.
Then what would be the objection to this from the landowner's standpoint? If you've got to do the same work and he gets to do it his way, what difference does it make? But it does give us, I think, some authority, and it is our authority to make sure this doesn't happen. So it does seem like, a letter of saying what he will do versus us saying what you must do. I guess that's the difference, isn't it? But we've sort of, I think he's got to, Scott, you have to communicate to him that we've been trying to get him to do what, and it hasn't happened. So I think it's, I think you have to explain to him that I don't think we're being ogres at all on this. I really don't.
Yeah, I would agree, Greg, with you and Judy as well. I think Delia did a nice job laying out the kind of the timeline and the efforts taken to, alert Mr. Johnson to the facts and make and remediate the situation. So I think it's probably due time for it as well.
Yeah.
All right.
I understand.
I mean, it's extraordinarily reluctant thing. I mean, we just don't
Yeah.
do this. It just doesn't happen that people just continue to, monkey around.
We've done one other one in my tenure here in the past
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess with that, we'd be looking for a motion to issue that specific enforcement order that speaks to the removal of the trap rock.
Yeah, that's why I was a little confused, Delia. You sent, so it's the second one that you sent that we would be
Yes.
speaking
Let me
to?
see
Okay.
if I can. Let me see if
Yes,
I can
Judy.
pull that up. So I had sent you an original one last week that was assuming that the homeowner wanted to pursue leaving that trap rock in place to provide a little bit of a drier field for his horses, or the horses that he boards. He doesn't want to pursue that. So the one that I sent today was to remove the trap rock. So let me just, I'm sorry, let me see if I can pull this up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you send that or Karen?
I did.
Delia's- Yeah, Delia.
I was just trying, it didn't pop up on my screen here.
Yeah, I think it was early afternoon, maybe.
No, I read it and I didn't know who it was from.
Ah.
I'm just trying to find it again, and that's all.
Okay. Yep. All right, I think
Okay,
I
here
have
it
just
is.
found it and pulled it up. So this is the appendix here that speaks to no work until a restoration plan is approved. The property owner has to let me know that this is acceptable. Scott will visit the site, flag the wetland resource areas, including the fill areas. Gravel fill will be staked in the fields. We have the resource areas quantified and a plan of restoration provided. Heritage also needs this plan. And if they have any conditions, those get incorporated. A butter notification is going to be required. And timeframes for when this filing comes in. So this will be reviewed at the commission's 2nd April meeting, which is, I want to say April 21st. And then the work will be completed by June 1st, 2021. And conditions for if there's any need for an extension, the property owner has the ability to request that. Provisions for finding, which is in accordance with our bylaw.
Thank you for writing that up, that second enforcement up, Delia.
You bet.
Seems like it lays it out pretty clearly. All right, so with that, I think we need a motion to issue that specific enforcement order.
I move that we issue enforcement order for 177 Barnes Hill Road as described to remove the gravel from the wetlands area.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. And we'll take the vote. Nick?
Aye.
Me?
Oh, aye.
Judy? Okay, Greg?
Aye.
Okay, Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you, Scott, for clarifying which option you wanted to take tonight. And obviously, I think it's a 48-hour notice would be the first, or response would be the first thing.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure to talk to him and respond tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
All right. I think with that, we move to, I think we've held over the 50-foot no build policy discussion from last meeting. So we'd have full board of commissioners to discuss it. Delia, could you bring that up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
And Nick, thank you for taking a run at some of the rewording here over the past couple of weeks as well.
Once it gets up, let me talk about what I did and why I did it.
Okay.
No, sorry. Sorry. Maybe, sorry, can you go to the administrative
Sure. Yeah.
approvals?
Yep. We'll come
And
back to that.
Colleen, jump in on River Street while I pull this up, please.
What do you have, Colleen?
Hold on a second. So River Street admin approvals. There was one hemlock out there. There was two leaders coming out of the base of it. One of them kind of fell down onto a fence and the homeowner needed to remove it. There's when I got to the site, that part was already removed, and then there's still another leader standing, or I guess the second trunk that was out there. So they're requesting to remove that tree, I believe. Delia, I don't know if you talk to them again, but they're trying to remove it, or just if that was the only one that was supposed to be removed. Either way, there was one of the trunks was removed, and it's an emergency admin approval.
Don't see any issue with it. Colleen, do you see any issue with that?
No, I did not.
Okay. And the next one, Calabria.
So that is two trees, one red maple and one white pine. They're quite substantial. They're both in the 25-foot no disturb zone and within the inner riverfront area, but they're very close to the house. The pine is growing up right next to the house, and the red maple is leaning towards it. So the homeowners, he's actually very interested in retaining as many trees on the property as he can, but those he proposes to remove and flush cut and replace with two native shrubs. I'm sorry, four native shrubs.
Okay. Seems reasonable from a safety perspective, so.
I would, yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble.
If we all have copies of it, we can just.
Yeah.
I've got.
Well, if somebody has that they can share, please do. You all should have the ability to share your screen if you know how to do that. Which is just going down to the bottom, and the green in the middle is share screen.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you, Judy. And then, yep.
Oh,
Oh, Nick
like
is,
Nick beat me to it. Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead, Nick.
Nick wins.
Nick has got a lot going on his screen.
Yes, he does.
Zoom in.
I do big screens. There's no way around it.
Okay, but it looks very little on our screen.
Yeah, can you make
way
it?
in.
Let me move it to my
bigger?
second. Oh, no, I didn't. I chose the first one. Let Judy, you do it. How do I let go?
Stop share.
Stop share at the middle.
Hold on. Stop share. I got it. Okay, Judy, you do it.
Okay, let's try.
I have two screens like that, you know.
Oh,
You can also jump in at any point.
I have two screens.
Well, I thought I was doing that, but it doesn't.
We see it. It's just nothing there.
Yeah. Just a moment here. Huh, that's interesting. Let me download it real fast. Sorry.
You can also try it in the meantime if you want.
I'm looking for it too. Yeah.
Okay, let me try this again now.
Yep.
You guys see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Zoom
but
in.
but this isn't
very
the edited
small.
one that was sent out. Oh, there it is. Okay, good.
Yeah.
No.
So we want to go down to
this
the
is-
places.
this
That's
is
not the
it.
most recent one, though.
That's not
Yeah,
it.
no, that's right.
Okay. Forget that.
It just came out in the mail.
So it would have come
Yeah,
from
Karen had sent
Karen
it.
on Friday. That's
Yeah.
what I'm going to look
Yeah,
for.
it came from Karen on March 12th, 4:26 p.m.
Okay. Ah. Now I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
What?
Should I share the right one? Is that the one that we're looking for?
Yes.
Yeah, that's-
Okay.
Get bigger, please.
Okay. You guys are.
Before we go into the edits, can I just ask a question about the first line of the policy?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look down, it will be down a bit further, please, Judy.
Okay, I'm not sure where I am at the moment. Just a moment.
Okay.
Oh,
I was trying to make it larger.
It did get larger.
Yeah, I think we can see it fine,
You
Judy.
can see it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute. It went away.
No, it's there.
No, I can still see it.
Okay. Is that what? Okay, we're looking at the right thing? Am I
Yeah.
scrolling?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just got smaller again. That's all.
Oh, huh.
I can see it though. Is it too small for some, or is it okay?
No, that's
It's
okay.
too small for me.
Okay.
But I can work with it. If everybody else could see it, that's good.
That's
Is that
good.
larger?
That's larger. Yeah. So now actually that did have the, yeah. So, okay. So the question I had, under the section starting the policy underlined. So yeah, stop. That's good. So it says the 50-foot no build zone shall remain the area 25 to 50 feet from the wetland. I find that very confusing. So to me, that implies that the first 25 feet are not part of this policy.
They aren't. They're covered by the 25-foot setback.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Okay. And that's why I was, Delia, that's why I was emailing you trying to work out, you know, the rest of the policy, but that's great. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give
Got
a
it.
little history. Judy, do you have a question? Or-
No, go ahead. Once you give history, then I'll ask my
Yeah,
question.
so I went back, when I picked this up, I realized how much I didn't know. And I went back and looked at the original bylaw in 2009 and the regulations that were subsequently adopted by town meeting. And there's no mention of any sort about 50 feet. The 50 feet was adopted several years ago, I gather, in order to have more control over this very sensitive area between the 25 and 50 feet. And so the NRC created this policy. And after a few years of looking at it and talking to Delia about it, it seemed that the policy, the way it was written, it almost seemed to grant somebody a by right opportunity to build something in the 50 foot if they already had something in the 50 foot. So what I attempted to do here is first on this, under the purpose of the policy, change the wording so that it's, instead of saying strongly discourage, we say we prohibit it unless circumstances are exceptional. And that's really what the rest of the policy is about, is how you go about proving you have an exceptional set of circumstances. So that's the first thing. And I even recommend, if it's okay to do so, that ultimately this sort of thing gets done in bold so that it's clear, this is what this is all about, is this sentence here. Okay, going on to the next page.
Yeah.
Are we going to discuss these as we go
Oh,
or
yeah,
come
go
back
ahead.
to them?
Discuss this now.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
my question is can we prohibit that?
Yeah,
Awfully strong.
Yeah, it is strong, but what we do is let me just respond to that and then we'll discuss it. We prohibit, but then we say there are circumstances and you can get around it, but you've got to deal with the circumstances.
Well, I like where you're going, Nick, but I don't know whether we can take a policy and in effect make it a bylaw, which I think the word prohibit and stuff starts doing. And I thought we were setting out on a journey to define the structure because we found ourselves caught in a sense where we say, oh my gosh, if you're thinking all structures in the way we talk about them, my example is an irrigation head, if it's 35 feet from the wetlands, because it's historically been put there and grandfathered in, you could move your house to that point.
Okay. Instead of making this prescriptive, why not prescriptive? Why don't we say something like, does not generally approve new structures?
Or say will be approved with the following hurdles, and then you put the hurdles in place. In other words, this is the only way you get it approved.
Right.
It has to have these criteria.
Right. Okay. So you've got the challenge of doing that here within a sentence. So do it within a sentence.
So is the issue that
That's what I did.
prohibits, Greg, is the issue that you would need a town meeting vote for the word prohibit?
I think if you get I think if you go too far down the road, it's a town meeting issue and you're gonna lose it.
I don't object to that point of view at all. It just, you need something in there.
I get it.
Something that doesn't undermine what we're trying to do.
I get it. I agree with you totally.
So let's set that aside.
You could say something to the effect, the NRC may approve additional structures or something, providing it meets the following criteria. And then you put all the criteria down below, which we'll get to, I assume, in a second.
I think the problem with that is it invites a game. Once you said that, then you told me what the game is I have to play.
Right, the may approve.
So can we go back to strongly discourages?
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, if you can't go beyond something, if you can't go beyond your principal structure any closer than that, there's no game in that. That's finite. I know, I think I know what you mean. You game every rule you're going to game, whether you deflate the footballs or not. You play the game, I don't know any way around somebody.
I think the only way around that is that, once you put in, this is how we understand it. Here's how we look at it. We've had this in our policy. And then unless it is put into the bylaw, then every few years, I think the NRC has to revisit it. Say, is this still working?
And I think it's imperative, given the fact we have one tonight that's getting close to the 50-foot zone. I think it's imperative that we straighten out the known problem that we have quickly in terms of saying it can only be a principal use and maybe there's more discussion to that, and get that resolved, and then go back and look at something. And I think you even brought it up a couple of meetings ago, Nick, that it may be time to ask the town if they're interested in doing something differently. But
Yeah, I think we should discuss that after this. Yes.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I do too.
That's a
And
separate
it's,
part. Yeah.
so I'm just trying to get to the point where we can solve a problem that makes me nervous every time I open the packet to see who has said, hey, you say this is a structure, this shed that's down by the water, and I'm going to build a house down by the water because I can do that. And that was never our intent.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I mean, I'm not opposed to putting back strongly discourages once we get through the next section and just look at.
All right, I'll shut up.
Okay. You got it. Can you scroll down, Judy? The next page?
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Next page?
Yeah.
If you want, Judy, I found it. If you want me to.
No, we're
Okay,
good.
yeah, you're probably better at this than I am, so I will
Well,
stop.
if I
okay,
need to
good.
make
This is-
changes, then
We're where we have to.
I can do that.
Okay.
We were there. We
We
got
were there.
close.
Coming back.
Hey,
Let's
we got
slow
the
that down.
fish right up to the gunnel and it jumped off.
There you go.
So Delia, you're going to share your screen?
She disappeared,
No, sir.
Oh,
didn't she? I don't see her.
Oh, there she is.
She's there.
Yeah. Her
Can you
name-
see it?
Yeah.
Ah, there
Okay.
she is.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay, there we go.
excellent. Okay, there we
Yay.
go.
Perfect.
Okay, so, okay, that's a little too, I want to see this plus the following paragraph. No, go down below where you were.
So capture this
I
paragraph.
want to see the following paragraph at the same time, where the changes, yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
A little
yeah.
more, a little more. Yeah, okay, there we go. That's pretty good. So, so what happened here? Back on the issue of trying to eliminate the game here and sound like we're giving people a right to build in the 50 foot if they meet certain, if the map looks right. Rather embed below in the hurdle, what I call the hurdles, the things you have to do to prove that you have a case, to put that stuff in here. So what I did, as I recall, is I created an A and B, or modified the existing A and B, but yeah, we created a new A and B. So degree, date of, and scale of past alterations in the buffer zone, noting precise distances of incursions from the wetlands boundary. Only portions of the principal structure, including decks but not patios, may be considered for purposes of expansion. No proposed expansion may reduce the distance of the structure to the wetlands boundary. And then down below, I don't think there was anything changed below that, was there? No, just renumbered. So the point was to just, get away with any mention of anything that sounded like there was a way out and all you had to do was play the game. But to really put in here what the hurdles are that you have to get over.
Yeah.
And to clarify that bit about the residents, basically the living quarters.
Yeah, I guess, Nick, the only question I had was that on the paragraph that was struck, I guess the way it was previously edited, I didn't see it to push forward into the 50 foot. It just seemed like again another good summary of what the 50 foot build is and trying to tweak the understanding of the principal structure, and that's.
I felt, and I'm speak for Delia, but so correct me, Delia, but it sounds, that paragraph always seemed to me that it sort of sounds like you've got a right in here to do something so long as. And that was what I tried.
Well, I think actually, Nick, until we actually change it with a bylaw, that may be the case.
Yeah.
That's kind of my point all along, Nick, is that I think we kind of wrestled with it, and certainly the attorney it was his house, by the way, on Barrett's Mill. he made that point very nicely. He wasn't threatening in any way. This goes back 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And he eventually acquiesced to our ways because we said we're not going to allow you to go any closer. But he contended that he could because he could prove it wasn't detrimental to the wetlands as well.
Right.
But he didn't ever go that far, right, Jude?
That's right.
But he was willing to say, okay, I can go as far as I am. I'll compromise with you. But his contention was he had rights that we were not even allowed to rule against because it's the buffer, not the wetlands. And his contention was our job is protecting the wetlands, not the buffer. And if he went 1 more inch, it wouldn't affect the wetlands.
I agree that he was
I think
right.
that's right. And so I would say that there's 2 pieces to that. One is that I think this paragraph here that talks about the existing structures is a good preamble to the waiver. And I think that's important to say upfront that we don't want you to be in this zone. And I think the second point is that this is just a policy. And until it becomes a bylaw, and this was, I think, a little bit of he was very polite, Greg, as you say, but it was very much his point that this is just a policy.
Right.
So we don't have, whether we say we strongly discourage or we prohibit, it doesn't matter. We could say we prohibit, but until we go through town meeting approval to get this into the bylaw, it is just a policy.
And I think his point also, and the reason I think we were able to work out and mediate this was that it was very difficult for us to say that a modest deck between 2 structures, he sort of had a U-shaped house, it had much of a ramification on the detriment because he never was going closer, and it was sort of internal. How would we say it was damaging the wetlands? I mean, it's a little bit like the Middlesex thing. The argument can be worded in multiple ways. Depending on what your goal is. But I don't know.
Yeah, because I recall that too, and we do have a needle we need to thread, which is we want to protect the wetlands, and we feel doing that is having a no build zone, the 25 to the 50. But we also recognize, because it's a policy, that if we go too far and someone takes it to the state and they say, nope, they're right, you can't enforce this, then we've lost the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think what this does too is it gives somebody who's outside the 50 a real problem of getting inside the 50. So at least we're only dealing with those that are inside the 50. And it may not be the best in what we really want to end up seeing, but I think we got to be careful we don't get too restrictive and lose the whole game.
Yeah. And that's why we're kind of trying to tweak the language here.
Yeah, no, I like the pink part that starts defining it. And as you say, the hurdles, Nick, I think that's great.
Yeah. I don't think it matters if it's redundant to the paragraph above as well. But I think it is a good preamble, the above paragraph.
And I think as long as we make sure you have to be principle, I mean, there may be an instance where somebody comes to us and can convince us that their garage or something or their barn needs to be expanded for some reason that was never thought of. But I think those will be outliers, and we'll just have to deal with those weirdos once in every 5 years, 10 years.
Now, to that point, what Greg just brought up, that would be a separate garage. So if a garage is attached to the house, that's part of the primary residence, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
So sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No, please go.
I just have a question. What do you guys think about, getting to this question about principal structure? We had the 367. Okay, so let's not be specific, but we have porches and decks that have been discussed as being part of principal
Yeah.
structures, but not patios because they're not really structures. What about a walkway or steps or stairs or something like that that happens to be closer?
Yeah, well,
One thing that Ed and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and one thing that we thought about was something that needs a building permit should be somehow tied into this equation, because we, natural resources staff, sign off on every single building permit. So nobody could put in a walkway with nobody's knowledge and then claim that that's their closest point of structure. Right?
Well, a walkway doesn't require a permit, does it?
Exactly.
That's Delia's point.
Oh. But
And so
if you had, if you had a shed above, let's say you had a 14 by 12 shed that was 12 feet, that would require a permit, but it pre-exists, and it's 8 feet from the wetlands. Can I move my house down to 8 feet from the wetlands?
There's another point about sheds. I went to the building department a few years ago, and at that time, I don't remember what he said, but it was either 200 or 400 square foot shed does not require a building permit.
Correct. I think it's 10 by 8 or less, or 8 by 8 or less, or
Right.
something.
Yeah,
like that.
building
But
permit
isn't
isn't
that,
necessarily.
but doesn't that where the principal, you're defining the principal
Principal structure.
existing structure?
Right.
So it's not either or, it's both.
But is it
Right.
any part of the principal structure? I think that's one of Delia's questions. Is it
Yep.
any part of it? Where does that stop?
Right, and for example, what if you had your back door up a walkway up a set of stairs, but it was a large landing, could be considered a deck as well at that point. So, I mean, are we talking about habitable principal structure, or are we as per this draft, considering all the decks as well? Because that's, what is the deck at a certain point, depending on how it's configured on site.
And I would
So
say
for-
that, you work so hard to keep the decks outside of the 50 foot,
Right.
right? And the purpose for doing that is to keep them from becoming 3 season in 5 years and then 4 season in 10 years, right? So
Precisely.
if that is the goal and the point and the approach, then I would say that becomes part of the habitable structure, so that if somebody had a deck from 50 years ago, they get to include that in their habitable structure discussion or alternatives analysis.
But it's interesting, because the question, I'm thinking of a deck, and I remember as my mother got older, she replaced the steps with a ramp, which was longer. Now, she didn't live in Concord, she lived in Pennsylvania. But I'm thinking of, as people do, would that require a building permit? I would say
It would.
Probably
that type of structure, while, I guess that's where, if one had already had that put in place, I would be a little concerned about including that as part of this 50 foot versus the deck itself, the living space of the deck.
So we had actually that exact circumstance, Judy, that never came to the commission because the person passed before it came to pass with their, but they had steps and they wanted to create a ramp condition.
Yeah.
And it was all within the 50, and we were sort of, on a staff level kind of freaking out about it. And said, okay, well, it's got to go to the commission, and how are we going to present this to you guys? And it was the same concern that this should be an exceptional circumstance,
right?
Because if somebody wants to age in place, but then, how do you not allow that to be part of a future condition that somebody else who moves into the parcel then gets to say, well, there's this ramp now that's 30 feet from wetlands where the deck used to be 45. So
Yeah.
I'd have to look back. I don't know that we ever came up with a good, strategy for that, but I can look back at that.
Could that be
It's
something that would be
several
put in
years
the
ago.
order of conditions?
Yeah, something that, if that condition changes, the homeowner changes, can that be?
It's so difficult to do that because that means
Towards the
that
deck square footage. in the
somebody
future.
has to flag that, right? So somebody has
Yeah.
to review that old order.
Mm-hmm.
And, what we do is we review the old plans. If there's a certificate of compliance that's been issued, we don't look at the old conditions. And that's where it would be captured.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But does it work?
Yes.
Yeah. Does it work, Delia, if you went back to your thought of building permit and that it's any structure, any part of the structure that would require a building permit is considered usable in terms of determining a proximity to the wetlands, but it has to be attached to the primary structure, the principal structure.
So I think we should digest that a little bit. Ed and
Yeah.
I talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
I haven't given it a whole lot of thought, but it was
Right.
something that just seems like it would capture, we could track it because, somebody wants to build a deck and they don't have one there now. We now sign off on every single building permit, so we would know. And we don't care about patios in terms of the.
Well, the criteria, when an engineer, usually it's the civil engineer that comes in front of us, the first question we're going to ask is, okay, the closest part of the structure you're using is what? And I'm just going to use this, and the person says, oh, the walkway that goes up, and we say, no, that does not require a permit, ergo, you can't use that. It's how we define it for the petitioner. And so when they come and say, well, then what? Well, any part of your structure, your principal structure that would have required a permit if put in today, that will qualify. And that's a pretty tight, I'm not asking for that I think we should noodle on this and come back to it, but that does seem to get us a little bit with these other criteria, that does seem to get us some good definition.
I think it does. I would like to have us all think about it a little bit and, think about the different permutations of what that might mean. But it does seem to me to be a logical capture of information and clear for any applicants. But if you need a building permit, that's something that, kicks you into this definition.
It's the part of the structure that you say, it needed a permit, you can use it.
Yeah.
Just one caution. I believe last year's changes to the zoning bylaws allow more than one residence on a lot now, where it didn't.
Correct.
So you can't just say primary structure. You probably have to talk about.
Well, so that's a good point, Nick, because, okay, so say you have a property that has, the main house, and that's considered the habitable dwelling. But then you have a carriage house and you have a guest house, and you have a caretaker's house. Are those also considered, and I would say that they probably should be considered habitable dwellings? Where do you not allow that habitable dwelling or principal structure to? And Greg, I would look to you for this because
I'm a little afraid of that to the point. Here's my point. You have an existing barn. And are you saying that if somebody has a house with an existing carriage house, not being used as habitable, and they come to the building inspector and say, I want to put, whatever it was voted in, 1,200 square foot apartment in there. And we can't stop that because it's a pre-existing structure. The building department says, well, the bylaw allows it. So now, bang, we get a principal structure. We get a habitable structure. Let's assume it's 35 feet away. now I come back to you a year later from the big house and say, well, that structure over there is 35 feet. I want to extend my big house all the way to the 35 feet.
Right.
You know, we'd have to be careful on that, even though I get your point that we don't want to be jerks and not be able to allow somebody in that structure to have a ramp if they needed a wheelchair situation.
Yeah, but you could just say that incursion's limited to once, to a existing incursion for specific structure. In other
Right,
words,
each structure stands on its own.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is that, so the carriage house, if it's 35 feet, if they come and say, I want to, they make it habitable and they want to put on something that's, 35 feet or more from the buffer, that would be okay, because that's still just that structure.
Yep.
Right.
But they can't put a deck on it.
But you couldn't take that incursion and transfer to another structure on the property.
That's right.
Well, you have to put that in the rule, in the policy here, because currently you could.
Right.
Currently you could.
Well,
So that needs to be clarified.
Yeah,
in
no,
here,
I
Nick.
think, yeah.
Do you want to do that, or do you want to take a crack at noting that in this, or do you want me to do that?
who are you asking?
You?
Me.
Delia, why don't you just take a crack at that?
Okay.
I mean, I think we've.
Yeah, and restore that paragraph.
Yeah.
We'll leave the pink stuff. Sounds like the pink stuff's okay. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts, Nick. I think it's good to have that more exacting down there.
Oh, I think it's very good.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Delia, decide what to do about that first page and about that grayed out stuff and how you want to do it.
Okay. I'll just I'll make some edits and share that with you and track changes.
That'd be great. And Delia, further on down, I think we were good with some of the mitigation change, the 5-to-1 down below that we previously discussed, I believe, right?
I hope so. So
Yeah.
I don't think we've talked about this though, but okay, so 10 times in the 50-foot no build zone for mitigation. But if you were going to mitigate in the 25-foot no disturb zone, which was closer, we thought that it was reasonable to say you only have to do a 5-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, seems like a good incentive to get them.
Yeah, Delia, we've had a few times when people have done mitigation actually in the wetland itself.
Yep.
Would that be a 5-to-1 or would that be like a 1-to-1?
I would recommend that as a 2-to-1.
2-to-1, okay.
Yeah. And that's just, the Wetlands Protection Act requires a 1-to-1 wetlands replacement ratio, but everybody, in the industry says they fail half the time, so you might as well have it be 2-to-1, or at least 1.5-to-1. So let's, in our bylaw, have it be 2-to-1.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make that change as well.
Great.
But let me think about that, and I'll propose some thoughts to you about whether or not we need to go into the wetlands replacement itself, because it then starts conflicting with the state.
Okay.
Good point.
So let me think about how we should be approaching that.
Okay. I did do a little bit of research, just looking at the MACC spreadsheet they put out about towns and the bylaws they have. And it's my perception that there are a lot more towns than I expected that have setbacks these days. And some of them, and there are several of them that have 25-foot, 50-foot, 100-foot, or things like that. And some of them, the way the one particular one I looked at, the 50-foot, the way they specified it was, you can't do it. But they might allow it, in other words, they'll allow it by policy. So it gives them better control. It says, don't try to do it, but we have policies that will allow it in certain circumstances. If we're going to try to do a bylaw, frankly, I think it's a multi-year effort.
Yeah.
Certainly not going to get it in this year. And there's a lot of discussion with other groups in the town and education about what other towns are doing and what's happened in the state, so that it isn't seen as something drastic and different that we're trying to do.
No, I think that's a
Right.
good point, Nick. I think, and I think we all discussed a little bit that we think it would be a longer term approach.
We need to start a project to do it if we want to do it.
Yeah, take some time, as you say, to research and also socialize with a lot of groups in town.
It's at least a year and a half
Yeah.
of time to get this in front of town meeting.
Mhm.
The bylaw itself
I'll
was,
volunteer to go over the MACC spreadsheet and just get some sort of summary about what towns are doing, just because there are 360 or something towns. in the state.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just maybe.
It
a few
it
that-
also ties into the town sustainability goals
Yep.
because wetlands are so valuable in terms of retaining carbon and
Mhm.
capturing
Oh,
carbon.
yeah,
So,
I think we could have much stronger allies than we had in
Right.
2009 going forward with this if we do it correctly.
yeah.
Thanks for that, Nick. That'll be great to understand what other towns are doing. All right, any other comments from anybody on think we beat this up for the evening? Okay. I believe that brings us to the end of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
There's a second? Okay, we have to take a vote. Judy,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Happy
Bye.
St. Patrick's